Hey everybody, it's me, Carissa. I'm the founder of People I've Loved, and I've been pretty down lately. And I was thinking that maybe I would start a segment on People I've Loved where my sister gives me advice on how to feel better because we went through this giant chain of text messages last night on our different thoughts on how we see reality. And hi, Alex. And I think that Casey has some good advice for feeling better. So, Casey, thank you so much for joining me this morning and for being willing to give your potentially sad and negative sister some good or bad advice, depending on how people feel about it. So anyway, we both were having a really hard time. We both were trying to figure out how to kind of feel better or okay. We're both pretty darn lucky to be where we are in this world at the moment. But I went the medication route that I was just going to up my Zoloft. And Casey, we're going to explore what you did to feel better, which is different than me. So anyway, let's give
I
you.
also laughed.
Wait, okay, Casey, can you give us a brief? Who are you? Really, really briefly.
Yeah, I'm. I just love watching you talk. Okay, I'm Chris's sister, and gosh, a lot of people call me Quigley, not Casey. So if you're watching from my channel, you're like, "Who's Casey?" It is my real name. So he calls me by my real name. But I go by Quigley because when I was 19, I was on American Idol, used Quigley as sort of like the stage name that I adopted after the show to sort of differentiate myself from Idol and brand myself separately. And it just sort of stuck, transitioned into the world of blogging. And as social media developed and took off, I grew my platforms and now have collectively about 500,000 followers on all my channels, but which is nothing compared to my amazing, cool sister.
Thanks, Casey. But actually, so if anyone is curious, so Casey's the one who I also would say was she coached me on how to start an Instagram page, and now she's trying to coach me on how to use Twitter, which I still don't understand what I should.
Not Twitter, TikTok.
Oh yeah, TikTok. Sorry. But anyway, so Casey's here today because she tries a lot of different mental health techniques to feel better, and she's trying one that is a little bit foreign to me, or what people normally think of when they think of how to stay mentally well, I guess.
Well, so as you know, I'm postpartum. I guess, when does the postpartum period technically end? Do you know?
Never. I don't know. But anyway.
Um, and I thought the hardest part of postpartum was going to be like right after he was born, but it's been getting progressively harder for me. So I thought to myself, maybe this isn't related and maybe there is something else that I can do. I upped my Zoloft, which didn't help. It went from 75 milligrams to 100 milligrams. And I was like, what? This is not improving my anxiety or my thoughts of depression.
Can we stop for just a second? What are you having anxiety about?
Yeah. So mostly my anxious thoughts had to do with God, it sounds weird, but I felt like I needed to crawl out of my skin.
Yeah, that sounds weird.
A little weird. No,
but relatable.
I think the majority of my anxiety was when I was present with Max. I was thinking about what I needed to be doing for work. And when I was working, I was thinking about how angry and like resentful that I felt that I didn't get to spend more quality time with my son. And it was just sort of this dance back and forth between the two. I really wanted to have more time to get stuff done and to accomplish things. And I really also wanted to have more time to be with my son. And it was just like this vicious cycle.
Fun.
And then like relationship stuff. And what else? Oh, here's some fun ones. Haven't been able to have an orgasm in 2 years because the Zoloft, which is a side effect sometimes that people experience. So that's been rough. And so I've been trying to solve it. And you get anxious when you try and solve things. Why? You're so funny. Like, why are you just surprised that I said that out loud or what?
I don't know. Anyway, give us another shocker. See if you can shock me again.
Shocker is I'm at the point where I think I'm supposed to be weaning my son. He is 21, almost 22 months. And so I've been telling myself, okay, well, maybe I can get my mental health on track. Maybe I can adjust my meds if I stop nursing him. So I had put all this pressure on myself to solve that situation and wean him. And in the process of doing so and trying to figure that out, I was driving myself nuts. I was like really, really anxious with not knowing how long it was going to take. And like the small steps that I took towards weaning him were just miserable. So I was putting all this pressure on myself that I had to solve it really fast and figure it out. Otherwise, I wasn't going to be able to move forward with my life. And the best decision I made with that was just stop trying to fucking solve it.
Well, but wait. Okay, so let's go really quick. I have one anecdote and then one question about what you've tried recently. One was, did you know that if anxiety, depression, and depression, if they're, and I don't know, maybe this is not true, but I've been reading a little bit about the earlier it starts, the more likely it's genetic. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the genetic component, potentially, or the culture in our family that maybe you saw. Because I think that we have a lot of, we come from a family of therapists in some ways and early childhood educators. And I think that we definitely also have like a worrying gene. Would you say that you have a worrying gene?
Yes, absolutely. Well, so obviously, so our great-great-grandmother, right? No, our great-great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother was institutionalized for postpartum depression. So in my brain, I always like kind of, I don't know if I associate it with, but I kind of think of that as like the source of like, that's still in our bones and still in our body, as like passed down through the women. I don't know. What do you think?
I totally think that that's a narrative that I carry with me as well. I think I also think about grandpa having sort of debilitating anxiety and worry. And so I think that it's easy to think, for me, it's genetic and also like a learned coping skill, but it really doesn't do anything. But so back to what you tried recently, and you're going to tell me about it, and then I'm going to try it.
I know it's so I hope that the suspense for everyone is like killing them. Not really though. I don't try. But yeah, so essentially when the Zoloft didn't work, like increasing my dose didn't make me feel better. I was like, I'm going to look for answers in the universe. I did the like nerdy thing that mom taught us, which was like, ask the universe to guide you.
Yes, she did actually teach us that.
And
The Secret was like super big when we were in middle school, I think.
Yeah. And so and one of the things that like has annoyed me is that so Max, my son, pretty much only falls asleep if I'm bouncing him on the yoga ball, which a lot of times I've been saying like, oh, this is just such a bummer that I have to do this. There are probably so many other moms that can just lay their children down and then go to bed, but not me. I bounce him every single time he naps or goes to sleep. And instead of like being pissed about it, or not mad, because, whatever, I'm lucky that I'm able to be with him at home. But decided to start listening to podcasts, which I know is what you do when you fill Margaret's meds in the morning. And I was like, this is going to be my time to, you know, enrich myself or whatever. So one of the first things I did last week, this is fresh, by the way. This is very fresh. Last week, I opened my podcast app and the Ultimate Health Podcast popped up. And there were like 10 different episodes that were all related to healing your mental health through healing your gut. Okay, so that's the crux of the situation, is how the gut and the brain communicate and where neurotransmitters are created, like cortisol and serotonin. And, you know, you've been a big fan of the vagus nerve stuff that's kind of like popped up recently. And so I started listening to a bunch of these episodes and started learning a lot about how to make simple changes in my diet. And it has blown my mind how effective it has had an impact on my mood.
Okay. I'm super skeptical, but go for it.
You're super skeptical.
Well, no, I want to believe it. I just am really lazy and I don't want to change my diet.
So that you are in the camp of 99% of Americans. It's so faster to just do something else and put a Band-Aid on our broken immune systems and our broken microbiome.
Okay, wait. So tell me really quick what the dietary changes you made is. And we're not trying to sell anyone. We're just, I think it's really interesting because I'm the older sister. When your younger siblings or your family members gives you advice and like automatically you're like, actually, I'm going to do the opposite. And, but I don't want to do the opposite. I want to try to figure out how to understand it. So tell us what you're doing.
Okay, so just so everyone knows, I am 100% the kind of person who gets like really, really excited and passionate about like one thing for a very specific amount of time. And then probably like 2 months from now, you will be like, hey, what about that thing you were doing? And I'll be like, what? I'm kind of a weird trend whore in that sense. Like I really like something for a bit. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is I'm really passionate about this thing right now because it feels like it's working for me. I can't tell you that it's not psychosomatic because sometimes when you want something to work really badly and you believe it works, it just works.
So tell us what you're doing.
Yes, bear that in mind. Okay, so
tell us what you're doing, but then tell us what effect it's having, like in detail.
Absolutely. Okay, so there are kind of like 3 components to this, and let's walk through each of them. One of them is changing what you eat and the order in which you eat things. The second is adding specific things to your diet that help heal your gut microbiome. Mm-hmm. The third is a technique called intermittent fasting, which I thought was completely related to weight loss, but is actually a huge like thing in the scientific and biological world that helps with so many things, which I literally can't even list because it has so many benefits for your health and wellness. But one of the big things that I was the most concerned about was mood regulation and brain clarity. Like,
I need those. I need those things.
A clearer brain.
Okay.
So fucking. Okay. Ready for this? Oh, and more energy. That's the third one that intermittent fasting creates.
Okay.
So the first thing I learned was essentially about how glucose and sugar affect your mood. Now we all heard of a sugar crash, right? Like you have sugar, it hits your bloodstream, you are like hyped for a minute, and then you crash. So there was this woman, and I can't remember her name, but she was on the Ultimate Health podcast, and she was talking about her research that she had done while wearing a glucose monitor. And she was is Maggie still on here? My friend Maggie, who has diabetes, will know all about this. But she was wearing a glucose monitor, which is obviously something you have to do if you have diabetes. But and she was monitoring and like taking record of her moods as she was experiencing those sugar spikes. And this might seem obvious to some people, but clearly for me, I had this like, big like, whoa. They were directly correlated. And so she started researching ways to temper those spikes and make them a little bit like less extreme. And the best analogy that she gave the audience while listening to this podcast was imagine like your stomach like a little basin, and then your gut like as like the entrance, or like a little entrance at the bottom, like a drain, right? So if you imagine eating sugar first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, it's going to hit your gut right away. And that's really hard on your gut. It causes a lot of stress. It sends off those cortisol signals, and it also creates inflammation. But here's the catch. You don't have to completely cut out sugar. What you can do is make sure that instead of just eating sugar or any kind of like carbohydrate and starch, they have the same effect right away. And if anyone is in the medical world listening to me and I botch this, I'm sorry. This is not my area of expertise. I'm just learning this right now. But what you do is you have a fiber first. So imagine like having some spinach, right? Or some sort of leafy green, something first that is going to create like a mesh lining. And then you have a protein or a fat that slows down the process of that sugar getting into your gut. There's like two elements that you have to have before you have sugar. So essentially you don't need to cut out sugar entirely, but if you have a green and a protein or a fat first, that will like block it from spiking, right? It's going to still affect you, but it's not going to spike in the same way because it's going to slow that process down.
Okay. But so like, is that just that spike? Because I enjoy that spike. Is it just like you're trying to temper the downward?
So even though you enjoy the spike, which we all do, technically, I think it's kind of one of those things where the higher up you go, the lower you go, right?
Yeah.
I do think that overall, like sugar, it's proven to be a temporary high, which creates like what we want is longevity, right? So the people who are actually studying this know that like the long-term effects of chronic inflammation and like IBS and stuff like that comes from those things, like that's going to create long-term depression, anxiety, like all sorts of shit.
Okay, so if we're thinking about this as a Casey gives me advice session, what do I have to, can you give me like specific things that I need to do immediately to feel the effects, to use my gut to feel better?
Yeah, so the first thing that I started doing, well, actually I have to rewind just for 1 second.
Okay.
I know I'm like so scattered, but this is all going to make sense. So about a month ago, I went to see my OB, and I said to her, like, look, I'm trying to figure out if I should be weaning. I'm actually losing a lot of weight. I'm more depressed and anxious than I've ever been. What do I do? Like, is the fact that I'm nursing and breastfeeding like contributing to this? You know, what is going on? And she actually recommended that I try intermittent fasting. She gave me a book to read. She said, look, read this book. I want you to make a couple of changes to your diet. Do this, this, and this. And she wrote it all down on a piece of paper, and she sent me on my merry way. And in my head, I was like, I'm not going to fast. I'm losing weight. I need to gain weight. Like, for me, the association with fasting is like a strategy to lose weight. And I'm like, that's not for me. So I kind of wrote it off a little bit, even though I trust my OB with my life. She's incredible. So I ordered the book because, you know, I like a science. I ordered the book, but I was skeptical and I put it in a closet and I wasn't. So then fast forward to this last week when I was listening to this podcast. The second podcast that I listened to was about intermittent fasting. And it seemed like it was this totally different thing. I had all these judgments about it, that it was, for people losing weight or trying to build muscle. And it was this like neuroscientist from Harvard who was talking about how it helped improve brain function. And actually, you know, when we were growing up and we thought that brain cells, once you lost them, you'd never get them back.
Yeah, I remember being threatened.
Yeah, that's false. You actually enter, when you fast, into a regenerative brain, like you can regenerate cells.
Okay, but what does intermittent fasting look like?
Yeah, okay. So intermittent fasting is basically just a way of saying, as humans, and I can't tell you exactly why, but I think it's just because of the way that we're biologically programmed. If we give ourselves a window where we give our immune systems a break from digesting food, and we essentially go a specific window of the day without eating. So let's just say 12 hours for a beginner. So from 7 p.m. after you've had your last meal to 7 a.m. in the morning, which is not really that long. You're sleeping for most of that time. It just basically means, it looks like for a lot of people, just cutting out snacking after dinner and snacking like first thing in the morning, right? So it's basically a window of time where you're not eating. Now, some people will extend that time to like 14 or 16 hours. That's like the basics for beginners, what intermittent fasting looks like.
So just don't eat before breakfast and don't eat after dinner.
Correct. And there are some things that you can have, like water. You can have black coffee. You can have bitter tea with no sugar. But that's key. And a lot of people, so that brings me to my first change that I made, which was I cut out my creamer and my sugar that I usually put in my coffee. And let me tell you, I love my oat milk. I love my fucking oat milk. And I realized that the oat milk of all the milk alternatives is the one with the most sugar in it. And that was a very fucking hard, brutal truth. And I really like sweet things. So the first thing I did was I stopped using sugar, and I just did espresso. And right, like a lot of people don't want to drink their coffee because it doesn't taste good, but just get better coffee. Tastes good, black.
Okay, but so anyway, so I think I could do this. I think I could do the like not eating after dinner.
Yep, anyone could do it. I think it's pretty easy. So don't make sure like you clock the time. Okay, I'm not eating after dinner. And then the next morning, the very first thing that I did to hit my gut right before the espresso black is actually a fun little drink, which is water, a shot of apple cider vinegar, and also some electrolytes. Now, a lot of times when we think about electrolytes, we think of like those little sugary packets of like liquid IV or whatever. Don't use that because that has sugar in it. But there is a brand called LMNT that has electrolytes, which is basically like salt and magnesium. Those have like regenerative principles, whatever. The science is there. That's what they recommend you doing. First thing in the morning, apple cider vinegar with water and electrolytes. Okay, that's this. Then coffee or tea, no sugar. Okay? So then that's what you have in your fasting window.
I think that's like pretty much all I can do right now.
I promise you can do these other things. Just wait.
Yeah, but the whole like Drano thing is just too much.
Well, then don't do that.
Okay. Well,
but it's really easy to like, if you're about to have a sugary snack, just just go to your fucking fridge and grab some spinach and throw it down your throat.
That implies that you can eat spinach or that you have spinach.
Well, yeah, or you can do other things. Let me get there. Hold on. We're not there yet. So I talk about the end of the fasting window.
I feel like for somebody to do this, and specifically me, it has to be like really easy.
I think that's pretty easy so far.
Okay, so before you eat a snack, you have to eat a bunch of spinach.
Don't get to that yet. Let's just talk about the fasting window.
Okay.
So for anyone jumping in, there are like 108 people who are in here right now, and if you're sticking with us, thank you. But the fasting window, let's just say it starts after your last meal of the day, dinner, at 7. You can drink all the water you want. You can even have a little bit of apple cider vinegar before you go to bed to like get that digestion going. In the morning, first thing you drink, apple cider vinegar and water. You can add electrolytes. You don't have to, but if you want, you can. And then also black coffee, no sugar, no creamer. You can have black tea or green tea. Okay? That's very easy. If you can do 12 hours is easy. 14 hours is a little bit better, but everyone kind of does what's best for their bodies. Now, this is key. When you break the fast, which is what we call breakfast.
Okay. Yes.
When you break the fast, you have to break it with a lean protein.
Like what?
So, if you are a meat eater, if you
Let's
have...
pretend you're not a meat eater. Well, tell us what a meat eater would do and then a non-meat eater.
Yeah, so if you're a meat eater, it's like turkey or, I don't know, what, like chicken breast, an egg.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that. Ideally, it's a lean protein, but it can be a non-lean protein too, but ideally a lean protein. But for me, what's easier than that is the vegetarian route, which is a pea protein or a hemp protein.
So I maybe eat like frozen peas?
No, close.
Okay.
So a lot of this is just easier if you get like an actual protein powder. But so Ritual is a brand that I have really, really loved for a very long time. I took the Ritual prenatal vitamins and postnatal vitamins. And what I love about Ritual is everything is traceable. Their supply chain is like, you can literally go on their website and see.
But they're like super expensive. Okay, well, anyway,
get a thing of pea protein on Amazon for like $17.
Okay, so what do you drink? Is it like a bar or a powder or whatever?
So Ritual comes in a powder. It's a pea protein powder. It has 10 grams of, actually it might be closer to 20. I think it's 20 grams of protein. And it also has MCT oil and L-thiamine.
Okay.
Which are brain, and choline, which is something that you get a lot of when you're pregnant that is actually really good for your brain functioning. So what I do is, so far, I've just done the little shake of the Ritual powder. Another thing that you can do that's really easy is bone broth.
Is it easy?
Well, you'll go to a grocery store. Broth is at all grocery stores.
Okay.
Broth. There's also little instant bone broth packages. You just boil some water and pour some bone broth in, and it gives you that. It will break your fast in a very good way. Now, for the rest of the day, you can kind of eat whatever the fuck you want in moderation. You want to avoid, in general, lots of sugar. You want to avoid lots of overly processed foods. You want to avoid, alcohol, if you can. But other than that, you're just trying to eat a really nutrient-dense diet.
Okay. So thank you for this advice. I'm going to try the fasting the evening fasting, and I'm gonna try eating some turkey in the morning because I feel like I can handle that. And then we're gonna check back in. But thank you for giving me advice, Casey. Everybody, thank you.
I'm just saying it totally changed just doing the apple cider vinegar in the morning, not even really adjusting my diet, but just doing the apple cider vinegar in the morning and cutting out my morning sugar creamer. If you can just do those two things.
Okay.
Your body will react in a really positive way.
Amazing. Well, I hope this is helpful for everybody. Casey, thank you so much for being the best sister in the entire global universe and for sticking with me and always helping me get through difficult times, whatever they may be. Seriously, Casey's always there for me and I love her so much. Okay, have a really good day.
Ask if anybody had any questions.
Oh, does anybody have any questions? I don't really know how to do questions on here.
Oh, because your comments are off.
Yeah. Somebody once a long time ago threatened to kill my daughter on comments, and now I just don't do comments anymore. I shouldn't have said that, but it's the truth. So I get a little scared to do comments. But
comments.
What?
So we don't need to do it.
Anyway, it's hard because I don't think they afterwards they apologized profusely and were like, I didn't realize you were a human and or had human feelings or whatever because I really broke down. But now I just still don't do comments. Anyway, I love you so much. Oh, wait, we might have a question. Okay, so someone's asking why not a vegan diet? Have you considered it?
Oh, I have. I have considered a vegan diet. I would like to move towards that. Personally, I would. I love plant-based eating. I love plant-based cooking. I would love to move towards that. That's just me.
But do you know if there are any health benefits to veganism, cutting out animal protein in terms of mental health?
It's not an area that I've researched enough yet to be able to speak on, but I'm sure that is the truth.
So yesterday at dinner, I gave Josh and Dad 2 fun facts. And the one fun fact for Josh was that the advent of objectivity and subjectivity, but objectivity first, happened when people started taking photos. And the other fun fact for Dad was that mushrooms have at least 50 words, not words, communication, or mushrooms communicate with each other. And they have 50 distinct things. Okay. We have a couple more questions. So Out of My Dreams asks, can I ask if you're still taking meds as well on antidepressants? And
I forgot. Yes, I'm still taking meds. 2, I forgot to add fermented foods to your diet if you can. More sauerkraut, more kimchi. Yeah.
So
probiotic if you can take it, but don't take it right after your fast. Take it sometime in the middle of the day with food so it's not as hard on your gut.
Alex Tuff, that was the other comment we got, that we definitely should add kefir or sauerkraut or other probiotics to your diet. And I didn't realize sauerkraut until recently was shockingly easy to make.
Oh, and it's so fucking good. I would eat just it straight. I love sauerkraut.
Yeah.
Good sauerkraut.
Yeah, he really does. Well, I love you so much. Thank you for doing this with me, Casey, and thank you for sticking with me.
Don't go away. I want to keep talking.
I love you. I'll call you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.